Good evening, everybody. Well, first of all, I must thank the Veerendra Kumar Memorial Committee for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk about the idea of India. But before I do that, I must say that going through the enormous achievements of Veerendra Kumarji, having been the Chief Executive Officer of Mathrubhumi, being a Member of Parliament from Kozhikode, and then, of course, being in the Rajya Sabha. We unfortunately, when he came to the Rajya Sabha in 2018, we lost him in 2020. He was a cultural icon of sorts. Even though he hopped political parties, he never hopped as far as his ideology is concerned. His ideology remained constant in socialist. There are very few people of the courage of Veerendra Kumarji who, when he became a minister and had a difference of opinion with the left government when he was a minister, there was some issue about the felling of trees, and he decided to resign rather than agree to the diktat of the government. That's the kind of person that he was. And of course, that's typical of people who won Sahitya Academy Awards at the national level as well as at the level of the Kerala government. So, in his memory, let's talk about the idea of India. I think the term idea of India has become a very trite term. I think wherever we go, we talk about the idea of India as if it's some new idea that we have about our great country. And if we really think about it, what is India? And why do we talk about the idea of India? It's because most of us don't really understand the birth of this great nation. If you ask me that a nation is comprised of so many facets which are embedded in its history, you take any nation of the world, unless you understand the history of that nation and its genesis over centuries, you will never be able to understand what the nation is all about. If you talk about the liberation of Italy, unless you understand what Garibaldi did, or the great German Empire, unless you understand what Bismarck did, unless you understand the 1848 revolutions that took place. So in order to understand what a country stands for, you must understand how it evolved over centuries. And when you understand that, you'll realize what India is all about. All of us talk about the idea of India in the contemporary world. But actually, the idea of India has evolved over centuries. Why is it that we are such a diverse nation? Why is it that diversity is embedded in our culture? Why is it we are what we are? And for that, we have to delve into thousands of years of our history, from the Gupta period right to the invasion of the Khaljis, and right through to the Sayyids and the Lodhis, the invasion of the Turks and the Afghans, the flow of populations that came through the Khyber Pass, the invasions of our country, the assimilation of cultures, the thousands of cultures and traditions that grew up because of this assimilation. The Mughal Empire, the aggrandizement of territories, the conflict within the country, the rise of the Marathas, the rise of Sikhism, all that is part of us. It's not about what we are today. It is about how we are and how we came here. Then came the Mughal period, the conflicts, the collaborations that took place between the Muslims and the Hindus. The British, when they came, they realized that they could not have ruled India unless they collaborate with people here, collaborate with communities. So this process of collaboration and diversification made India what it is today. So the India that we live in today is by its very nature and genesis diverse. That's what we've got to understand. Its diversity is not something that is an idea. India's diversity is not an idea. India's diversity is a social evolution of historical reality. And we cannot get away from it. There is no other country in the world like India because there is no other country that's the kind of history that India has. We're not a monolithic culture. We're not governed, we're not ruled by a class of people. There are thousands of dialects and thousands of languages that flourish here. And the reality of India today is not because of us today, it is because of certain historical facts. If we have to deal with a place like Manipur, it is because the British aggrandized right up to Burma. And if you have the Rohingya problem, it is because of our association and the conquest of the British in far-flung territories of India. If you talk about the Afghans today, Afghans assimilated into our culture. The Turks assimilated into our culture. Our women were picked up and taken away. There was cross-fertilization. It led to diverse processes of thought. That's what we are today. And we cannot get away from it. We are different, but we are one because of the fact that we have a constitution which reflects our diversity. Why is it that we have a constitution like the one that we have? It's because of the fact that really the constitution that we have today is almost a replica of the 1935 Act. The whole concept of parliament, the whole concept of the position of the governor under the Indian Constitution. These are all things that we've inherited from the British. So when you talk about the idea of India, you must realize that this is not something unique that we are thinking of today, but it is the evolution over hundreds and thousands of years which has led this country to be what it is today. Now, having said that, the challenge before us today is, do we embrace this diversity or should we erase this diversity? That's the conflict that's taking place today under the present political system in our country. There is a political party in our country that seeks to erase diversity. But you can't erase a historical fact, which is why I went into the history of the birth of our nation. How can you erase diversity through the political diktat of a political party? We don't even speak one language in this country. And the wealth of our literature, whether it's Tamil literature or it's Malayalam literature or it's literature of other parts of the country, Gujarati literature, Marathi literature, you cannot erase it. You have to assimilate it into your own psyche. And we have to work with all these people. And therefore, the only political leitmotif that can take this country forward is the acceptance of our diversity and the assimilation of that diversity into what we call the idea of India which accepts that historical fact. The present establishment does not realize that erasing diversity is an anti-historical move and will lead to tension at the seams of the Indian polity. And that is why, while the idea of one nation is attractive, but we are not one nation in that sense. We're an assimilation of and cross-fertilization of myriads of cultures. It's like a mosaic that falls into a pattern. It is that pattern that we have to embrace, and that mosaic that makes that pattern that we have to celebrate. That, I think, is what I think is the idea of India, which we need to celebrate. Now, at the same time, to manage this diversity is a huge task. And that is why we have tensions. For those who even believe in diversity, to manage it is no easy job, because you have to manage the aspirations of people who are culturally different, people who are intellectually, their thought process is not in alignment with ours, people who have traditions which are distinguishable from our traditions, people who have thought processes that are entirely different. And we as a nation have to manage that. And to manage that is no easy task. But willy-nilly, whether we like it or not, we have to manage it. Which is why I always felt that the best form of government in this country is a coalition government. Because the coalition government represents the coalition of ideas. It represents the coalition of the diversity of this country, the coalition of forces that make India what India is. Because if you start imposing your thought process, it's not going to be acceptable. It's not going to be acceptable in Tamil Nadu, or it's not going to be acceptable in far-off Manipur, not going to be acceptable in West Bengal. They don't worship the gods that you worship here. That's true of Tamil Nadu, that's true of Maharashtra. The festivals in Maharashtra are entirely different from the ones in Punjab. So that's what we have to cope with. Now, that's no easy task. No matter what prime minister you get in this country, the task is very, very difficult. Because you have to manage the aspirations of millions of people, which is difficult to do. Now, having said that, what is this country confronted with today? And that's a question that we must ask ourselves. Virendra Kumar ji, for example, was the one who was very familiar with GATT. And he was extremely critical of GATT. What we are confronted with in the global community today is two forces which are antithetical to each other. On the technology front, we have what is called artificial intelligence. Now, why is the West embracing artificial intelligence? The reason is simple. Per capita income in the Western world, especially the developed world, is very high. The cost of labor is exceptionally high. There's a downward trend, downward graph in population. The elderly outstrip young people. There are not enough hands to work, and therefore technology has to take over. Technology allows you to produce the same goods, the same services at a much lower cost, because you don't have to pay pension to people, you don't have to pay a salary to people, you don't have to pay salary to robots, right? Your machinations, your technology will do the work for you. So you need a lot of capital to produce technology, because technology comes with ideas. Ideas come through research. Research happens in institutions, educational institutions. Educational institutions have to be of great merit. Students have to be of great merit. And because of the high quality of education, you get new ideas. When you get new ideas, then venture capitalists come and pick up those ideas, and you have prototypes. Then the prototypes then ultimately result in commercialization of that product or service, and that it is sold to the rest of the world. So the movement of the West is towards artificial intelligence, and in India, we have too many hands. How do we provide jobs to people if we embrace artificial intelligence? As it is, the service sector, which uses technology, contributes about 58-59% of our GDP. And if the service sector is the one that uses technology, if that service sector, which contributes the maximum to the GDP, were actually to embrace artificial intelligence, you will not have even employment in the service sector. Forget about agriculture. Forget about MSMEs. So willy-nilly, we cannot afford to embrace artificial intelligence. So we are in the midst of a conflict where our policymakers have to decide what to do. You can't avoid artificial intelligence because our own industrialists will not be able to compete with the rest of the world. So you have to embrace artificial intelligence. At the same time, you have to provide jobs to people. Where do you provide the jobs? How will you provide the jobs? And if you want to provide jobs by creating a whole cadre of great technologists in the country, then you need to revamp your entire education system. But how do you revamp your education system? You can't revamp your education system because there are no fiber optic networks in this country that connect villages, that connect the gram panchayats, that can do the last mile connectivity with schools. So you can't produce a workforce that is technologically efficient and technologically empowered. So you can't produce that workforce, then how will you produce technology? So you need to rethink about your entire education structure. And what you have in this country today is a leak after leak after leak after leak. Who's thinking about it? I'm sorry to say, which political party is thinking about it? Which education minister has talked about it? Who is addressing this? What debate is taking in Parliament on this? Has anybody talked about it? Is there an agenda? Mic band kar denge. I'll switch off your mic. I won't show you with the rest of the country. I will interrupt whenever you speak. I will not give you time to raise issues that you want to raise. Is this the way to run a country? Is this our idea of India? I'm just giving you a small example of where we are and where we need to go. So you have adopted all Western mores. Your economy today is in the hands of a few. We are in the midst of a classical era of crony capitalism, right? The working class is clueless as to what to do. And even if you want to give your jobs to the youth, you cannot. There are no jobs to give. I must tell you, share you a friend, a colleague of mine, Supreme Court Harris, came to me and said that, look, I landed from someplace in India in Delhi last night at 2 or 2:30 at night by Air India flight, and there was no loader. He said, well, we were kept in the aircraft for 2 hours. And where Air India advertised for loaders' jobs in Bombay, see what happened. People who have degrees are looking for a job for loaders. I mean, where is my country going? Is this the reason why we have this great constitution in our hands and we talk about justice, social, economic, and political? And which political party, I'm sorry to say, which are those political parties who are getting together and talking about these things? Which is why I decided to become an independent member of parliament like Veerendraji. At least I can say my mind. I don't have to tell a leader and ask him what I should say, what I should not say. We're going through a crisis and people don't realize it. We're the most populous country in the world. We don't know what to do with our children. I mean, you can have any amount of yatras, but what are we talking about? Give the name of the owner. So if there's a Muslim owner and all the people working in that shop are Hindus, who will be hurt? I mean, what kind of world are we living in? This country needs radical change. Prime Minister Nehru was once asked, he said, I think he told a British journalist, he said, look, I happen to be the Prime Minister of India, therefore I can't say much, otherwise I'll shout from the rooftop as to what is happening in the world. This is the same thing that's happening to me. I want to shout from the rooftop, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing with our institutions? What are you doing with our parliament? How do you hold elections? How does this chief election commissioner conduct himself? And what are political parties doing, sitting there doing nothing about it, except talk? On January 1, you have an electoral roll which should be frozen. There should be no name deleted after the January 1 electoral roll, even if the election is in October. Just at the cusp of an election, you will have hundreds of voters whose names are deleted and there's nobody to answer. So what kind of electoral process is this? Your electoral process is polluted. Your democratic process is polluted. Your political structures are polluted. Your economy is in the hands of just a few, right? And you want to compete with the rest of the world and you say that you are a $5 trillion economy. Which world are you living in? You have no idea of India and you talk about the idea of India. It's a very sad commentary, the times that we are living in. And what we are actually seeing today is another form of creeping colonialism. If you really look at the world today, the biggest corporations are trillion-dollar economies. Trillions of dollars. And there is a network of these corporations through the digital network to the domestic elite around the world. They will feed you what they like, feed in terms of news. The agendas will be set by them through artificial intelligence. They will instigate revolutions and disruptions. They will interfere in the politics of nations. They are the czars of the world. They control the biggest economies of the world. They will decide. Today, you know what is happening? Conglomerates are buying up cheap land in India because it's for sale. Money is coming in, and ownership of this is going in the hands of foreigners. You don't have to conquer India today. You have to conquer its economy. When we talk about, give lectures and make speeches in Parliament about the great budget that we are going to present. We'll talk about that tomorrow, day after. So let's be clear. India is what historically emerged in the context of what our people went through. India has to be managed by us, and India must be managed through a coalition of ideas. That is the only idea of India that can survive. And if somebody thinks that he can bulldoze that idea, then I think this nation will rise and reject it. Thank you very much.